Where's Rick?
When it comes to horror games, well, obviously the inherent difference to a horror movie is that we're not just observing, we're actively taking part. We are the ones that are the cause if we are to die in a horror game. And also, in horror games, you have 8 hours plus to stretch out a narrative and multiple characters to play as and play through, as opposed to the standard about 2 hours you're going to get in the cinema. So of course we have iconic pillars of horror gaming such as Dead Space, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, but the bigger and more modern orientated horror gaming scene isn't populated with these, but more saturated with the asymmetrical multiplayer horror experience. Whilst this genre has been the more dominant in the horror gaming space, Dead by Daylight is the only game that has actually stood the test of time, at least for the last 9 years. Oh dear. Wait. Oh my god. Wait.
Ah, the light. Ah.
Now, fun fact, this video actually started off as a love letter to Dead by Daylight and why it's my favourite multiplayer game, why I still play it, but with the last few updates that Behaviour have put out, it's turned into a bit of a different video. The last few updates that this game has received have pushed DBD dangerously close to falling down the same fate as a lot of its surrounding competitors, being lost to the void with no updates and no players. So if any of you haven't heard of the game, here's a quick overview. When the game dropped back in 2016, there were 3 original killers, with more to be added shortly, and the first one of real big note being Michael Myers, the Shape, joining the roster in late October of 2016. A huge name, bringing in a lot of new eyes, giving us the opportunity to play as or against the embodiment of evil from the popular Halloween movie franchise. This would be followed by Freddy Krueger with A Nightmare on Elm Street, even though it was the 2010 remake version.
Fuck you. Ooh, sounds like fun.
Still a huge name alone. By today's standard, that isn't shocking to hear. We now have Chucky, Pinhead, Leatherface, Nemesis, the Demogorgon, just to name a few of the licensed killers, which many brought survivors along with them as well. This game has a huge catalogue now, with 37 killers and 44 survivors, all of which coming with their own 3 teachable perks. Each licensed IP obviously brought a potentially whole new fanbase over to the game to see their favourite characters in the restraints of this little video game. Five Nights at Freddy's was one of the biggest examples of this. But of course, Behaviour brought plenty of their own DLCs in the meantime. Original killers and survivors that would be tied to the deeper lore of the game if you wished to look that far. So why is this game the only one that's left standing now? While its peers drowned under the weight of a live service system, Dead by Daylight continued adding bigger and better content with no sign of slowing down, continuing to bring in bigger and more recognisable IPs whilst expanding the game with quests, effective seasonal events, and for as much as the game has had its faults, and we will get to those, the devs continuously at least tried to keep an active line of communication, and it always felt like they had the player base's best interests at heart, even if the actual changes were misguided. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of us have stuck with the game, because it has always felt like even if they're not the best devs at times, they're good people and they tried their best. But this faith has been brought into question for the first time really for me this summer, but we'll talk about that more shortly. One of the biggest changes I remember Behaviour making was the graphical overhaul. In 2020, trying to maximize next-gen graphics and upgrades in technology, and their expanding team, they reworked the entire look of the game. And I think it looks great. My only flaw being that I feel like they took a bit of the colour away, leading to many players using shaders or other third-party expansions to get the best of both worlds, which is what I now do too. But this huge graphic update really showed me that they give a shit, essentially. Working from the ground up to improve their graphics, all while giving us DLCs and extra content, really showed me that they're willing to give their all to keep this game going and being the best it can be. And this is nice in a time where now more than ever, we see games that are left completely abandoned and a player base left with less money in their pockets with no sign of the game that they invested in.
It's bad. Real bad.
I think the first huge step ahead for DBD was how it was kind of malleable. Being an original foundation, it had a clear gateway for more things to be added as we go on. The entity being the force that causes the matches and brings these killers to take the lives of the survivors over and over again. Now, if you're looking to go into deep lore and a storyline, you do really have to go looking for it, but I think that actually works in the game's favour because this game has been out for 9 years now, doing background storytelling. If you're a new player who loads on now and you got shoved all this lore, that's going to be insanely off-putting, so I don't mind that that's in the background, and frankly I've never really gotten into it if I'm being totally honest. But this basic concept provided a perfect path for regular content, including established IPs. With the format of the game, you can just say the entity picked this killer and these characters from their world and brought them into this realm, where they are forced to play matches for the rest of time. And thankfully, they've always stuck to the horror guts with this concept. They haven't Fortnite-ified the game as the likes of Call of Duty have and such. I think as long as Behaviour restrain themselves to at least horror-adjacent IPs, that side of the game will continue to go strong, and it will always have the benefit of not being tied to a license at its core level. Friday the 13th and Evil Dead are aimed primarily at their fan bases. Dead by Daylight, at its name, isn't tied down by a big pre-established entity, and through that has been allowed to suck other big names into its orbit, meaning even if they are lost, the game is still going to be there. Like Stranger Things was removed for a time and Hellraiser was taken off the store more recently, Dead by Daylight still remains despite that. Even if at one point every DLC was to be taken off the Steam store and every character out of the game, Dead by Daylight would still be there. When talking about perks and items, it's tough for new players because there is so much content in the game now. Whilst it doesn't have that issue with story baggage, it does on this front. So many different perks and mechanics that new players do have to genuinely absorb so much to really have any chance at succeeding and playing well in games, climbing the ranks, and frankly having fun. But it's a double-edged sword because the more perks and items, the more ways to play and the more it adds for the current player base. That's what I love about the game, the fact that we do have more and more ways to play every update.
Oh, there he is.
Whilst upon release it was clear the intention that the devs wanted was for us to play stealthily and avoid detection, but now the game is geared much more to looping and being chased by the killer. This makes sense for sure because the aim of the game isn't exactly complicated, so people get used to it and understand the mechanics and get better at them, so now the amount of different perks allow you to choose how you want to go into each game. Be the guy who will take the killer's attention across 5 gens, or be stealthy and ensure the gens are done at a quicker pace, or be a team player and ensure your team is constantly healed, or my usual tech, which is to be a nuisance but actually go down within the first 5 seconds. Oh, I'm dead. For sure, because of how saturated the game is and how good many are at the game now, it is very daunting for newbies, and that's the game's biggest hurdle at this point in time. Once you grasp the initial gameplay loop of repairing motors and being chased and pallets and vaulting and all of that, you have the chance to actually explore how you want to go about doing those things. Oh my god! I'm unreal. And it seems Behaviour understands how the game has changed. Through the perks they've added seem to show that they are embracing the player base's adaptation as opposed to fighting against the player base to force the game into something it's not. So the game has had its fair share of controversy, from behind the scenes to poor execution of content. One of the biggest issues I remember was Freddy. For the longest time, Freddy was an abysmal killer, astronomically useless within the game, being unable to hit a survivor unless they were in the dream world, and to get them in the dream world, it would take an additional 3 seconds or so. And those are precious seconds where any other killer would have got a hit, so by the time any other killer has a down, Freddy is only getting them injured. And this brought up another one of the biggest challenges that Dead by Daylight had, being the balance. It's up for debate constantly whether the game is killer or survivor-sided, and for me, as one who plays a bit of both, I think it's quite easily survivor-sided, but you can quite easily argue for both. But it's also not that simple, because every killer with different abilities, for example a nurse, the nurse's ability is to teleport, and so if you have a good nurse player, you can basically remove walls and pallets and windows from the game because you can just shoot through them. If you're up against a survival with friends with 4 people in a Discord call and 4 purple flashlights and flashbangs, the level of coordination is going to be unbearable and nearly impossible for the killer to deal with. Balancing is always being talked about in the community, and I think before this summer, the game had found a bit of a sweet spot for a short period of time. But I think the important thing for me as a player of this game is to accept that it's never going to be perfectly balanced. I don't think it's actually feasible. With the sheer size of the game now and the different characters and perks and powers and skill levels, it just can't happen. There's no way you can perfectly hit the spot of balancing the game and go on, because you're always going to get another update that shifts the balance. And even if you theoretically could, there's always going to be at least one player who disagrees with others. But it's clear that behavior is always at least trying to find the sweetest spot. And when some of the loudest voices are illegitimate ones, if behavior are seeing those, which is becoming a bit of a concern right now, and then adhering to those qualms instead of the genuine ones, there is obviously a disconnect. This is a game where the smallest second can change the outcome of a match. So the smallest of tweaks can make the biggest of changes, and we do get regular changes to different perks and mechanics to try and accommodate for the new additions that frankly often bring a whole new set of issues. Now, a big part of what Behavior do is claim to base their actions on player feedback. So let's talk about that community. When I first started consuming Dead by Daylight content, I thought this community seemed pretty lighthearted and fun. Boy, what a thought. More than any other game, I see the players of this game abusing the reporting and feedback systems. There have been countless streamers, only some of which that have faced repercussions, but I can imagine on the production side when the loudest complaints are the ones that are total nonsense from angry, toxic people, it's hard to differentiate the true from the false. So I do empathize with behavior on that end.
Useless buckle up, useless we're gonna live forever, useless desperate measures, useless off the record, useless lightweight. And then he's stream sniping. Of course he is.
The Dead by Daylight community is full of amazing people, but there is a side to it that is smaller, who approach the game like an esport and cannot adjust to the huge gameplay curve, which again, that fault goes more into behavior because it's just getting more inaccessible to new players the further we go on. And those loud voices are the ones that give a bad name to the whole community, which I think is unfair because I think there are so many people that are also. I mean, there are so many content creators that I watch, there are so many people that I've met through the game that are so cool. It's clear that a lot of the staff at Behavior do legitimately care for what the players have to say, but I think through the expansion of the studio, we have found ourselves in a bit of a disconnect at this point in time. All of this is leading me to talk about the infamous live stream that they just had with Chandler Riggs. A huge misfire on every conceivable front when there was a great opportunity to bring people together after a relatively poor received update.
Acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
So the last DLC we had in the game was The Walking Dead, bringing Rick and Michonne and a legendary Daryl skin. Obviously a pretty high profile thing. And then to get one of the lead actors from the actual show, the actor for Carl, who is a self-admitted player of this game, what an opportunity that they squandered in embarrassing fashion. The livestream was plagued with hackers hijacking the matches to an unplayable state, but considering this stream also consisted of 3 high-profile content creators they've had a lot of experience dealing with, they've got workarounds. Despite suggestions from the likes of Otstava of what to do to prevent this, behavior denied them at every turn, even at times being frankly blunt and rude to their special guest, telling them it wouldn't work when it would, and it does, leading to the live stream ending early and them not even getting to play a full game. Never mind the technical issues like Chandler's mic cutting out just hearing half of a conversation for a load of the stream.
You can press escape and hover over the perks and it tells you.
I understand there were potentially issues with needing consent forms or something. That's the only excuse I can come up with anyway to understand why they wouldn't just listen to the guys on the stream and fix the issue. It's annoying obviously, and fuck those hackers for ruining this stream, but my god, it was still handled on the spot atrociously. It's just not good enough because they clearly weren't prepared for it. But even if it was a case of, they didn't have consent forms for other people's names to be shown on stream. Okay, well, you should have been prepared. That's not a good enough excuse, because you should have seen this as a potential issue. You should have the foresight to know the issues with your own game when you're doing a live stream. How do you not know that? This was coming off the back of one of the buggiest updates we've ever had. Meet Jim. Jim was a piece of scaffold that appeared every time the offering screen came on. Yes, a minor thing that doesn't really impact the game, but come on, this should not be happening with a 9-year-old game that is ever expanding, so you have to question it. In its attempts to show them putting the players first, they have proven that on some level there is a disconnect, but I also don't think the blame is entirely on behavior. Earlier I spoke about how this game is the only one that has survived the years of failing live service asymmetrical horror, but I worry now that maybe this has led to the team having a bit of complacency about the state of their game. This is the first time I've seen the audience as rocked, and myself included, because in its current state, it's not been fun. This game has had some abysmal PR over the years generally, including infamous moments such as the director behavior telling players to try a different game. For as much as I respect it, because it's true, you get fed up of a game if you play it for too long. It's just not something you want to hear from the lead guy creating the game that you want to play.
I would say maybe try Survivor for a bit. No, but it's true. I mean, change it up. Maybe you're just tired, you know, or play something else for a week. Try Civilization or something. I shouldn't be saying that. Should I be saying that?
With everything I've got written here as well, I'm truly only scratching the surface. I could go into the dev telling fans to stop asking for a colorblind mode, getting mad at them.
Alright, JC, it's getting really boring just blabbing about colorblind mode all the time. We've heard it.
They introduced NFTs with Hellraiser. There was even a big incident where the White House posted a video talking about video game violence, and Dead by Daylight was featured in that White House video. The team on multiple occasions have now requested to be voted as winners of the Labour of Love Award. An insane sentiment when these requests have come right after such poor updates of the game, and as of right now, the game has shown that it might not be as bulletproof as they maybe had begun to feel. After The Walking Dead was frankly a letdown all round due to the underwhelming implementation of the DLC, bringing tons of issues into the game, which had happened with the Five Nights at Freddy's DLC too.
I know what kind of man you are.
A notable huge problem was the audio in the left and right channels were switched. That's so off-putting and is so difficult to play the game in that way. The Walking Dead brought in a map which just felt lazy. It felt so generic with one landmark that just had the doors from the show, and that was about it. No creativity in it at all. And then we had the likes of Rick's dialogue and voice acting that was not performed well. Some of these issues have been resolved, but we continue to see hackers becoming a more and more prevalent issue. As much as behavior claimed to be improving the quality of life, we are yet to see evidence of this. They seem to be hearing and responding to the heavy heat that they're currently receiving, but until we see the changes, it's gonna be hard to get behind them this time.
Okay, I'm just gonna play my ukulele.
Fuck yeah. Especially when in the most recent PTB at the time of recording, their tests completely ruin the killer experience. I get trying to implement anti-slugging and anti-tunneling because it sucks for everyone involved, right? But they've just gone so overboard to relieve pressure from the killer side that is gonna make it so much harder for them to play now. And I mean, they've just reworked Myers, and I've not played it, so I can't really talk for how, if the changes are good or not, but part of the modification is kind of taking away a huge aspect of what made Myers quite a unique killer.
And he just
What?
What is in it?
I know.
Meshing him in with an overused dash ability that so many killers have now. All of these separate factors have built up in the fanbase, do not forget. So when such huge licenses get poor receptions, it's a really bad sign, because if I'm AMC, I'm fuming with this.
Human nature to come.
And would be doubtful about coming back for another collaboration, and would be doubtful if I were other companies looking in. I really worry that if some big changes aren't made soon, the game could have a uncertain future, because the reaction has been loud and clear. I love this game, I'm still playing the game, and there's some great stuff going on. I think generally Springtrap was a pretty good addition, and with any luck, maybe they'll improve and update the Walking Dead map. I think the perks that they introduced with Michonne and Rick were pretty cool, and they're still updating 2v8. That's a stellar new game mode for them that we've wanted for ages, and it genuinely does get better with every new event it's a part of. I think their biggest challenge though is helping people through that learning curve. Genuinely listen to what the biggest creators play, what the biggest voices in the community say, because they know what they're talking about. And we need to make sure that new people can find the game and adapt to that learning curve instead of totally being confused at the entire time they're playing. At the end of the day, I love this game so much, and so here we are hoping that it finds back some of its strength soon. I know this video has been more from a survivor perspective, but behavior hate killers, so yeah, I don't want to play killer.
Completely skip the jam.
Yep. He's fucking me.
Ah. Ah, the light. Ah. Ah, the light.